Mark Hewitt.
Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak in favour of this bill, having been involved in the scrutiny at most stages. I'll join my honourable friend for Wolverhampton North East in thanking all of the witnesses that came forward to give evidence on the Bill Committee. I thank them for the evidence they gave and for their useful insight from their respective sectors. So on this side of the House, we are clear that small businesses in the retail, hospitality and leisure sectors should pay lower business rates. This bill establishes 2 new multipliers, lower than the current standard business rate multiplier. In order to pay for these changes, we must ask larger businesses to contribute their fair share so that our smaller businesses can thrive. And that's because we on this side of the House know that when you have tax cuts, you need to pay for them with revenue-raising measures, something the opposition have not quite realised yet. Now, this is a good mechanism that this government is deploying to save our high streets, to incentivise local investment and to support entrepreneurship. Now, high streets, as we all know, as all members in this House will know, are absolutely essential to local towns and should be given the support they need. I am pleased to say that the measures in this bill will benefit smaller businesses, local businesses, like those on Queen Street, which sits in the centre of Leeds South West and Morley. Now, during the Bill Committee stage, we heard from Paul Gerard, who's the Board Secretariat Director at the Co-op, and he told the Bill Committee that these changes will help 92% of the Co-op's retail properties. But he also estimates that they'll help 98% of retail businesses because they will have a rateable value that allows them to benefit from these changes. That has to be welcomed. And as for those that will pay more to make these changes possible, the higher multiplier will apply to properties with a value greater than or equal to £500,000. Now, this includes large warehouses, as has been referenced, that are often used by online giants. They will pay their fair share, and we can start to level that playing field so that essential community high street businesses are on a level playing field with multinational corporations. Of course, I'll give way.
Honourable gentleman for giving way, and of course he's right that there is a challenge in making sure that things are fair and level playing field between the online world and bricks and mortar business, including in our town centres, and we all support that. There is a thing called the digital services tax, conceived, of course, while we were in government. I wonder if he'd say a word about the relative advantages and disadvantages of trying to go after online retailers with business rates change, which will also affect all manner of other organisations, including bricks and mortar retailers, or doing it a different way through a more direct type of tax.
I'm grateful for his intervention, and all I'd say is I'd return to the earlier point I made. We know that we have to support these smaller businesses, these bricks and mortar businesses, as he called them, and the only way we're going to pay for them is by finding the money from elsewhere. So we've chosen to cut business rates for smaller businesses, and we are choosing to raise the revenue from the larger businesses, the larger corporations that have been getting away without paying their fair share for far too long. So that is my comment on that. By all means, I'll give way.
I'm grateful. The honourable member will recognise that it is the government's intention to reduce business rates for the smallest businesses. But as I've mentioned a couple of times in this debate, House of Commons library research does show that if you compare this year to 2 years' time, then small businesses will end up 80% worse off, whereas the big chains will end up 40% off better off. I believe this is an unintended consequence. Would he urge the Minister, as I am doing, to address that point in his wind-up?
I'm very grateful for the contribution from the honourable member. What I'd say to that is that while, of course, I've read the House of Commons Library research into this, I also took time to listen to all of the witnesses who came forward at the Bill Committee stage. And they made it clear that this bill, that these changes will benefit small businesses in the long term. And I'm quite happy with their evidence, with the evidence that they provided to support the changes in this bill and the changes that this bill makes. What I'll do is I'll move on to the next part of my speech, and I'm happy to take any further interventions that might be relevant to that point, because I'm going to talk about the amendments now. I do think that new clauses 1, 2 and 3 are unnecessary. I think the government is going to monitor the effects of the new multipliers, and as we know, in the budget 2025, they will absolutely show what the effects of these multipliers has been. They will also do the same in any future fiscal statements. So the monitoring is already going to take place. So The Honourable Lady refers to changes and the impact that this might have in 2 years' time. Well, the government's going to be making a comment on that in the future budgets, in all future fiscal statements. In addition to this, Amendments 1 through 6 would significantly impact and reduce the support that the bill is able to provide retail, hospitality and leisure businesses. I do think it's a noble amendment, but by all means I'll give way.
You mentioned the leisure activities, and actually I've had some soft play facilities that have contacted me, and they've talked about the importance of play for children's well-being, but have said that actually they're not sure if they'll be entitled to that leisure exemption or that kind of lower rate, and actually even Parliament experts themselves are not sure. So I'd ask, would you support in calling on the government to clarify that soft play would be included in those lower business rates?
I'm very grateful for her intervention, and yes, if the Minister can provide clarity on that, that would be really helpful. As somebody who uses soft play, not personally, but for my son Oscar, as enjoyable as it is, for my son Oscar, for my son Arthur, who's 6 months old and not quite eligible to take advantage of soft play, I'm sure they'll be keen to know what the benefits are too, so perhaps the Minister can offer some clarity on that when he gives his closing remarks. But yes, Amendments 1 through 6, while they are noble, the bill is about the high street. We know just how much our high streets have suffered. Now, this does not mean for 1 second that we're backing down from the challenges facing manufacturing businesses, which is what Amendments 1 through 6 are aiming to help. The budget announced over £3 billion to support the manufacturing sector, including £520 million for a Life Sciences Innovative Manufacturing Fund. But the changes to business rates in this bill are primarily about supporting our high streets. Now, moving on. As somebody who was teaching on this date a year ago, Madam Deputy Speaker, I am particularly interested in Clause 5 of the bill, which does remove, as has been referenced, the charitable relief that some private schools enjoy. I welcome this, along with the broader measures in the budget to remove tax breaks from private schools so that we can fund state education properly. So a vote for Amendment 10 would actually delay this funding for state schools by another year. It is estimated that of the 2,444 private schools in England that they could affect, only 1,040 will be impacted by the change. It raises around 70 million in the process, which, when taken together with the other revenue-raising measures we've announced, actually increases per pupil funding in real terms to benefit the 94% of students who attend state schools. We must give every child the chance to succeed in life, and that is exactly what this bill and the other measures we've announced are doing. I'm very happy to give way if the honourable gentleman has a point to make. Now, by all means.
I just sometimes think it's worth reflecting that actually the education budget does go up every year. It doesn't go up because there's been a change in business rates or VAT or anything else. Sometimes with the logic we hear from members opposite, it sounds like, well, if the revenue from these things was slightly smaller than expected, does that mean there's less money going to go into education? Of course it doesn't. And by the way, we keep hearing this thing about hiring 6,500 more teachers. Does the honourable gentleman know how many more teachers were hired in the last Parliament?
Not enough.
I'm grateful for his intervention, and I heard him put that question to the Minister in last Monday's Westminster Hall debate. Just to go back to his original point, we'll come to 6,500 new teachers. We are taking these decisions to deliberately increase the amount of money that state schools have to teach all those 94% of students that enjoy state school education. I think as a basic principle, all members of this House can get behind the idea that it is a basic function of the state to provide a well-funded, excellent state place for all students, whether parents choose to take advantage of it or not. And that is exactly what we're doing with this bill and the other measures we've announced. By all means.
Talking of basic principles, does he therefore believe it is right to tax education? Yes or no?
I believe it is right to tax businesses. Private schools are businesses, and we are choosing to levy this tax on businesses. We are not choosing to levy this tax on state education because, as I was just setting out, it is imperative on us to make sure that there is a well-funded, excellent, state-funded place in education for all students, should parents to choose to take advantage of it. And of course, it must be remembered, Madam Deputy Speaker, that not all parents have the choice of private education or state education. The reason that it stands at 94% of students in state education is because that choice does not exist for most parents in this country. And that is why we're going to take the necessary action to fund state schools properly. I will make some progress, because I can see Madam Deputy Speaker would like me to make some progress. Oh no, she's been quite generous with her time. Thank you, thank you. In which case, I'll take more interventions. Now, some in this House have raised concerns about whether this legislation adversely affects those private schools that are primarily concerned with teaching students with EHCPs. I'm pleased to report it does not. The government has clearly set out that private schools that teach 50% or more students with EHCPs, that's education, health, care and social care plans, will continue to be exempt from business rates, which is exactly the right approach. So there is no concerns there. Now, Amendment 8, turning to that, seeks to make exemptions for certain kinds of schools. And we've talked a little bit about faith schools. We talked about it a lot in the second reading. I can't support this amendment, given that we are ending these tax breaks to support the 94% of students that attend state schools. I can't support it for that. If we dilute the measures in this bill for this exception, it's easy to make an argument for the next exemption, and the next one, and the next one. Our guiding principle should be that every child is entitled to an excellent, properly funded state school place, as I think I've said repeatedly. Now, Amendment 9, which is the last one that I'll speak about, is written to give local authorities discretion over whether the higher multiplier will apply. As I'm sure many members in this House will know, local authorities already possess wide-reaching powers regarding discretionary rate relief. So given that this bill does not affect those powers at all, I don't think there's any requirement for this amendment. So, to conclude, Madam Deputy Speaker, the measures in this bill are vital to bring about the restoration of our high streets, support local businesses and give state schools the funding they desperately need. These are the priorities of this Labour government, and these are my priorities too. And if the members opposite claim to be the party of business again, if they ever hope to seize back the mantle of being the party of opportunity, I hope that they put their money where their mouth is and join us in voting for this unamended bill today. Thank you.